Hey everybody, Pete from the GenWell Project here, the human connection movement that since 2016 has been encouraging people through education and as a catalyst to get connected with one another, friends, family, neighbors, and colleagues. And we're now waking up in COVID-19 and recognizing just how much we need each other. Today on Connected Conversations, which is a series of conversations we launched with the onset of COVID-19 to help people stay connected to information and people who can help them manage their way through COVID-19 in the very best way possible. We're thrilled to have Maureen Brine on the show with us today. And there she is. Maureen, so great to have you today. Thank you for making the time to have a conversation with us.
My pleasure, Pete. I'm really glad to be here today.
You know, this is interesting. We had you on in season 1 of Connected Conversations to talk about addiction, but you're also a specialist in the couples therapy side of things, and we are really excited to go a little deeper into that now that we're 7 months into COVID-19.
Who knew, eh?
Yeah, who could have ever imagined? Well, let me give you the introduction you deserve, because before we get started here, we also want to make sure that we thank some of the volunteers who are always helping us get this going. Akrit Michael, who is working the technical board. And we're a little late getting started today, but welcome to the benefits and drawbacks of modern technology. And a huge shout out to our partners at JP Wisers, who are helping us spread the message about the importance of human connection each and every day. Maureen Brine is a well-known and highly respected specialist in the field of addictions. She's also an educator and a couples therapist, an advanced imago relationship therapist, an international addiction specialist. She has been in private practice since 1985. In both Vancouver and Toronto. She is a sought-after global speaker, a workshop presenter, and trainer. And I will honestly come forward and say, and she's a good friend, which is most important. And at a time when we need to be surrounded by people that we know that are there for us, who support us, and build the network and community of people that keep us supported during these challenging times, I think it's more important to call that out than ever before.
Thanks, Pete. Yeah, we've known each other a long time now.
A very long time. And again, thank you for doing this, because, when we had you on to talk about addictions early on in the evolution of Connected Conversations, I think the conversation was so powerful about how a lack of connection leads to addiction, or whether it takes us into addiction or whether it actually keeps us in addiction. Human connection can play such a critical role. And I think relationships are pretty complex now, and certainly COVID-19 has added more complexity to them.
Oh, that's for sure. That's for sure. And the latest sort of saying in the field of addictions is that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. And in these challenging times, for sure, addictions have gone up. There's no question. Relationship issues, if they were there before, they've been absolutely magnified.
Yeah. So before we get into the deeper questions, I think the first question is asking you how you're doing, because I think as somebody who's always focused on helping other people, it's important for us to always check in on each other, especially even in this conversation. So how are you holding up after 7 months of, certainly helping a lot of other people, but trying to take care of your health as well?
I think I'm doing pretty well. I think my work gives me a lot, for sure. It gives me a focus during this challenging time. I think if I wasn't working, it would be very difficult. I'm blessed with a really good relationship. We work at it. And so I told him the other morning, his name is Scott. My husband's name is Scott. I said, I can't think of anyone else I'd rather be sequestered with than you. So that's a good thing.
That is a great thing to hear. And interesting that you say that work is so, valuable right now. And we know that there's been a lot of changes already in employment, and there's probably more changes to come. And we're not here to talk about the struggles that people will face through unemployment, or just, working remotely, or in the gig economy. but I think that's probably another conversation for another day, just about the impact of not having. We've been built on a society that had 8 to 10 hours a day going somewhere and working with a group of people. And when we take that away from people, who knows what the impact of that's going to be.
And I think that's true overall. It's like, even with the whole couples family situation, who knows, what the long-term impact is going to be. It's too soon into the COVID situation to really know that.
And we'll dive in, but I think a part of this conversation, the challenges that people are facing, like losing a job or financial insecurity, only add to the complexities of a relationship. But the first question I had is, this hasn't been easy for anyone going through COVID-19, but what do you think are the unique challenges that a couple has faced, going through COVID-19?
I think, one of the big ones is spending so much time together. Right? That most couples are not used to, day in and day out, having that much time together. So, if a couple had a fairly decent relationship before COVID, that's probably continued into COVID, right? So I have lots of couples that I'm working with that have said, you know what, there's some real benefits, not to the disease, but we have more family time, we have dinners together, we have fun together, we play games together, so there is a newfound kind of intimacy, I guess, at being all the time together, 24 hours a day.
It's interesting. It's interesting. I think you could probably go both ways, right? Because I guess relationships are on a spectrum, really healthy and probably struggling. Yeah. And, as I've seen in conversations with, workplace people, in times of strife, some people come together and they become tighter than they've ever been before. Yep. And then others, it creates greater fragmentation than ever before. So what is it that makes one go one way or the other?
Well, I love your tagline, right? Which is all about connection, one conversation at a time. And, I am an imago therapist at heart, which is the work of Harville Hendricks and the book, Getting the Love You Want, which I'd like to give a shout out to, because that would be one thing that couples could read and should read during this time. Our tagline is healing the world one relationship at a time.
Right? Perfect.
So I think, couples who were disconnected at the beginning of COVID are having a very challenging time. My practice certainly hasn't gone down. If they didn't have the skills to connect before COVID hasn't done anything to help. And so there are a lot of people who are in a lot of pain and feeling quite disconnected from each other. And as you said, it's on a spectrum. So there's also the other side of that, where people are more connected and they're working together and they're becoming creative, doing things creatively as a family, as a couple. So it's right across the board, but certainly the stress, I think, of COVID, like you said, the financial stress, the, not going out, I think the summer was great because the weather was fantastic. So at least if people could get outside and do physical things, that really helped. But now we're facing fall and winter where that's not going to be as easily accessible. That's going to be tough.
Yeah.
For those couples that are struggling.
Yeah. One of the things I've heard repeatedly from people is in regards to connecting with their kids is the fact that we had no scheduled events. There was no team events. There was no dance. There was no music. Yeah. And that, those families that were able to come together have really benefited and valued this time to actually spend time together instead of just being, courier services and Uber services that are dropping the kids off to be entertained or participate in something else.
Right. So I think in relationship, and especially now, each person needs to do their part on behalf of the relationship. So, my feeling, and one of the quotes I use a lot, is that most couples have connected time, unless they're in terrible shape.
Yeah.
All couples have disconnected time. It's just human nature. We're different people. Conflict is normal. Conflict is actually growth trying to happen in the relationship. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. Something's trying to grow when a couple's in conflict, you know. So most couples have connected time. All couples have disconnected time. And a lot of couples do not know how to make the repairs to the disconnection, you know.
It's interesting when you talk about disconnection time. I think what you're speaking about is when they're not in sync. But I also believe that you know, I think it's. I always have said that there's three people in every relationship. There's you, me, and us.
That's
And
right.
you know, you need to champion me. I need to champion you, and we need to champion us.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge right now for many people may just be the fact that we don't have our other outlets. How important do you think having, you know, whether it's work as we talked about, or maybe it's other aspects that make us, that fulfill us as people?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that is very difficult too, that there are fewer and fewer outlets other than being online, right?
Yeah.
And so I love what you're saying though about you, me, and us, because I think that's very true. It's like in a healthy relationship, we need to have what I'm going to call an I-thou relationship. And Martin Buber wrote a book called I-Thou, right? And one of the trick questions I ask therapists when I'm teaching them about couples is, which part do you think imago focuses on, the I or the thou, right? When actually imago focuses on the dash, right? That's the relationship.
Yeah.
So I have me, and I behold you as a subject in your own right. And then there's us, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, we don't have the usual supports. That's part of the problem. But for me, I like to think about, what am I putting into that relational space, right? And so I want to do my part on behalf of the relationship. So one of the ways that couples can get out of a struggle together is, I'm not doing this per se for you. I'm doing it for us, right? The way I speak to you, how I see you, the things that I get concerned about, how is that going to affect our relational space? And how can I say things to you in a way that keeps you connected to me rather than disconnected? You know? So
Is it, are you seeing, is there any data that's coming out right now about, you know, relationships and how we're faring 6-7 months into COVID-19 without all those additional, and I don't want to call distractions is probably the negative way of looking at it, but it's about the other, you know, the other things that we do to keep us fulfilled, going to work. I play hockey. I was playing hockey 3 times a week. I now am recognizing how important those were for me to find the balance, both mentally and physically. And those distractions or those other activities just aren't there for us right now. So what is it doing to the relationships that we're in?
Well, I think it's certainly increasing the stress between couples, right?
Yeah.
And you know, and not having those outlets is challenging for our mental health and well-being. You know, now there's a balance to that too. You know, if in the past, let's say you're playing hockey 5 nights a week, are you doing that for your well-being, or are you doing that because you want to get out?
Yeah.
You want to get away from your relationship, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a balance to the well-being, right? Are we exiting from the relationship with the things we love to do? So I think what it is forcing us to do is to pay attention to the relationship, right? But as I said, most couples don't have the necessary skills to make repairs when there are big disconnects, you know. So they need to learn how to keep it emotionally safe between them. And I think there are a number of things, like minimizing the negativity, which is sometimes really challenging, you know. So not saying that nasty little thing that wants to roll off your tongue, right? Certainly not being critical. So we have a campaign that's called Zero Negativity. I don't know if you looked that up. I think I might have mentioned it to you last time, but the Zero Negativity Challenge, right? So it's like taking all the shame, blame, negativity, and criticism out of your relational space. That one act alone will make a huge difference on the relationship.
I'm not surprised. I can think about things in my own household in the last 24 hours where they're not intended to be mean. They're just tended to call something out and, hey, didn't you do this? And didn't you? And it's just like, hey, we didn't need to call that one out. Like,
Right.
just let that one skate on by, and everybody will be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's picking your spots, right?
Yeah, yeah. No need to go on everything.
No.
So I think I've heard, and again, I am the farthest thing from a relationship expert. That's why you're here. But I think I've heard that financial stress is the single largest issue that most couples face. But I'm curious, and maybe it's just in the work you do. So, if there's no stats out there yet, because again, we're living this in the moment. But do you think that's changed, and is that now not the issue that people are facing or feeling or battling?
I think it's it's a major factor. I mean, especially for people that have their own businesses or there's threat of losing their job. I mean, it does. I mean, the whole fear around, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know when it's going to end. So people are living with a lot more fear and anxiety than what they were prior to March
Yeah.
or February, right? And that creates tension for couples, and that tension creates conflict, you know. So, I think the the biggest things I hear are certainly, yes, around finances, but also just feeling unsupported by their partner, feeling not listened to, not supported, um, and lots of fear stuff.
Yeah.
You know, lots of
It
fear.
it's interesting. I almost think the fear of the unknown is almost the umbrella
Yeah,
under which everything, financial, job, relationship, children, I
yeah,
know that we struggled with, homeschooling our
yeah,
son for many months there, even in the summertime without camps. It was, okay, today we're going to have to come up with 8 more games to entertain the little guy for the day, things that, we haven't had to do. And maybe that's another conversation, which is, hey, maybe we've gotten distracted and maybe we should be spending more time. There's a couple comments here from Michelle, who's saying, truly seeing many domestic challenges as people come back to relearning each other. And I think, to your point,
mhm,
spending time with other people forces you to eventually, have that conversation that maybe, to your point, going to hockey 5 times a week. I was only 3. Some of them were in the morning night, so I wasn't trying to avoid anything. But I think, I'm okay to laugh at that. But I think, it does force you, when you're spending so much time together, you have to have those conversations.
that's absolutely right. And
Yeah.
it's if people are not used to talking with each other that much, it's challenging, right?
And Michelle's
And I
saying
mean,
that
there's
there are
lots
some
of
stats.
decisions.
Yeah, go
There
ahead.
are some stats, yeah.
Yeah, so Michelle's must be saying some financial stats. I'm sure, if it's not a stat about how much money has been lost, or the financial insecurity must still be, creating a lot of pressure out there. And I, one opinion, but I believe we're not even through the full financial impact of what's going on here.
No, I don't think we know yet what the true impact is going to be overall, right? So again, we're left with a lot of anxiety. And so what do people do with their anxiety? You're not able to go play hockey. You're not able to go out and do your usual things. So there's been an increase in drinking. There's been an increase in anxiety meds and antidepressants. You know, um, some people aren't coping very well with this. You know, it's a real struggle. So
And so you've just actually, to me, this is the lead in to, and not that this was even part of the original, flow of questions, but what role can connection play? When we talk about that insecurity and that stress, when we talk about, spending a lot of time, not only with each other in our own 4 walls, but, not having all the other distractions, what role, even if it's virtual, getting on a Zoom call, getting on a Skype, getting on I don't care what, but
yeah,
talking to those people that used to be part of your daily routine, or even building a new community that maybe wasn't there for you before. How important is that to avoid maybe some of the other choices that we're making?
I think it's huge. I think we need both connection at home and outside of the home. So this weekend is Thanksgiving. I think there are a lot of people who are very sad that they're not going to be getting together with their families, and this is our second holiday where it's not been possible. So
Yeah.
I mean, we're having what I call a Zoom Boom Fam Jam on Monday.
The Zoom Boom Fam Jam.
Yeah.
I think that we need to trademark that.
Yeah, I should. And there'll be 20 of us online, and we get a kick out of it because all the kids are there and it's fun. But it's not the same, but the connection's there, right?
Yeah.
And so that really does help. And we do know that connection at home decreases anxiety. There's lots of research too about how connection, we can help regulate each other's anxiety. So if you have couples in close proximity to each other and you observe them getting connected, not even physically touching, eventually you will see them start to get in sync with each other's breathing,
Wow.
right? And in palliative care units, people who have families that are connected to them, have a loved one that's connected to them, their pain decreases with physical touch, right? And I know from, my own Scott's situation, we had a major surgery last year that I could actually touch him and watch his blood pressure drop. That he would get more regulated. His health was more regulated when I was in close proximity to him. And so there's a lot of cool things that way around connection. Right?
Yeah, it's a big reason why, and even I will say that when I launched the GenWell project, I'm not even sure I understood all the facts and all the figures. Even 3 weeks ago, Harvard, it's the university, or I should say the Massachusetts General Hospital just came out with the single largest preventative action we can all take to avoid depression is connecting with other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And 2 weeks ago, direct correlation between loneliness and isolation and type 2 diabetes. So to your point, there's a physical benefit, there's an emotional benefit, and that's the point of the GenWell project, is helping people build those connections, because we understand how important these connections are, because none of us were ever educated. And, unfortunately, we find ourselves in a pandemic and having to have these conversations so that we can help people along the journey. Yeah. But wouldn't it have been great had we have had all this knowledge in the hands of people to empower them, as we went into this?
That's very true. It's, I really respect Harville Hendrick's work, because he's been working on this since the late 70s. And he, and he has I think I mentioned it before. He and his wife, Helen, have a program called Safe Conversations in Dallas. It's massive. And so it's interesting that folks like you at Harville are getting the importance of connection, human connection around the world, right? And we need it.
Yeah. Hopefully, our goal with the GenWell project, no different than Participation for Exercise or the Canadian Food Guide, is getting this in the hands of people when they're healthy, and not waiting for them to get to the crisis before they go, geez, I really should have kept that network of friends that I used to have before I went into a job and got totally lost in, work and avoided my family and friends and my neighbors. So, hopefully we can continue to spread our message and get to a place where all Canadians and people around the world understand how important human connection is. Hey, so let me ask you this question, Mo, is silver linings for couples coming out of COVID-19. Now, I think you've talked, we've obviously more time together, which can go both ways. Mm-hmm. But let's take the positive for the next 5 minutes, and let's say, okay, let's assume people put all the time that we're being given to good use. What do you see as the silver linings for couples?
One thing I think is that they're finding out that they're friends. You really are my friend. And I lost sight of that. With all the busyness of life and everything else, I forgot why I like you, right? Why I chose
Wow.
you, and I think that's a really important piece. I think also if couples treated each other more like friends, you know, our world would be a happier place.
Yeah.
And there's a book called The Good Marriage by Judy Wallerstein, and she interviewed a huge sample of couples married over 35 years. And from that, she got a group of happily married couples. She asked them, what's the single most important ingredient of this happy union? And they all said the same thing. We're friends first. So I think the silver lining, people are rediscovering each other again.
Wow.
You know, I wish it was in higher numbers, but people are rediscovering each other again. And I love what you said about, let's not focus on downriver cleanup. Let's do prevention,
Yeah.
right? So we need to be teaching people communication skills. We need to be teaching this to kids in school. Some schools are talking about empathy training and about good communication. We need it. We're born with empathy. We're born connected, and it's a process of losing that over time. And it's sad. We need to become reconnected to ourselves and to the people we love.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy that we've lived in the greatest growth era in the history of the world since the Second World War. And at the same time, well, we had so much abundance that we
Yeah.
didn't take the time to share and educate on the fundamentals. And we ended up in a world where we built taller fences, bigger houses. We enclosed ourselves physically and emotionally, and now we're waking up in the middle of the pandemic, recognizing how much we actually need each other.
We really do. And I think, um, we need to develop together a strong sense for the future, right? And that needs to be a positive one, in spite of all the negativity and all the stuff that's happening. I think one of the things that I encourage couples to do is to appreciate each other every single day and to have a gratitude list, to be grateful, right? Because nobody knows, you know. So those are some of the positives, is to learn how to really appreciate your partner, your family, your friends, you know, and and live it one day at a time, because that's all we got right now.
Well, yeah, I think, in all the conversations we've had, even with our conversation about addictions before, I think it's focus on the things that you can control,
Yeah.
which is the time that you spend with each other. Try to, focus on the positives and do the things that you've been recommending
Yeah.
through this conversation, because none of us know. And if we know, and I think I've said before, this part of the Gen Well project was inspired by my mom telling me that in the Second World War, in Ireland, when they had to get through challenging times, it was only by coming together as a community, whether that was friends, family, neighbors, colleagues, whatever. The reality is we will get through this, but we'll get through it much better if we're surrounded by people of all walks and shapes and sizes. And,
Yeah.
we are all in this together, and we'll get to the other
Yeah.
side of this much better if we do it together. A quick question on things that you might have seen in the last 7 months. I was just talking to somebody who's in a workplace, and they're doing a game show, and there's this new platform that she was telling me all about, excited about what it was bringing. Have you seen any new technological advances in regard to relationships, or is it really, about face to face, with the people you're with? But there must be some other support programs out there
Well, I
that
think
people have
there's been,
developed.
certainly in my Imago community, the whole ability to work online
Yeah.
has, people are, Imago therapists are creating all kinds of like courses and 1-day workshops. I think there are a lot of, what it's brought out is creativity. And whereas I might have said to you before COVID, yeah, working online, yeah, I can do it. It's not my favorite thing. But I realize that when I'm working online, I'm way more focused, right? Like I'm looking at you right now and
Interesting.
I'm very focused on you, right?
Mm.
So there's been a lot of creativity. And it's possible to have connection online. We need to be intentional about it, in fact, and create it. So I'm seeing a lot of creativity.
It's
Creative
funny.
programs.
I think the creativity part is a great one, and I love the fact the other day we interviewed Kelsey Killam, Casley Killam, who is a human connection expert out of Harvard, and the word she used was intentional.
Intentional.
And I think that is the difference. We're intentional about going to the gym. We put it in our calendar. We're going to the gym.
Yeah.
We're intentional about when we go grocery shopping, eating better. And
Yeah.
what we need to do is be as intentional about the way we connect with other people.
And especially if there's a partner there, it's like we can have a relationship by design, and you can change it up at any time by changing what you're doing. Right. So many couples focus on, well, he didn't do this and she didn't do that. And no. What are you doing? What are you putting into the relational space that's different today? And if you want to be better connected, you make it your job to put in connectional stuff into the relational space.
Mo, I don't think I need to say anything else. I think those are the ones. It's about accountability to ourselves, not only in the relationship, but also, using this time to actually figure out, hey, was I focused on the right things? Was I doing what made me happy? Because if we can take the holistic perspective on ourselves, I think we can, that probably will lend itself to a better relationship as well. So I want to finish off with a question that we ask again at the end of every conversation is, what do you think you missed the most? And what do you want to do when COVID-19 is over and you get a chance to get reconnected? And I know that you just saw your grandchildren in the last few weeks. So that's officially off the board for this period. But what's the next thing on your list of things that you want to do?
Hugs. Hugs. I want to be able to hug people that I love, So, and actually see more people in person. I do miss that part of sort of being together in person with people, and but definitely hugs, physical touch, right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of research that's showing that is what people, and I have a very sad story that was shared with me from somebody who made the connection to the Genwell project, of somebody who was trying to take their life, and who talked them out of taking their life. And the first thing that person asked for, after a conversation about connection and that I'm here for you, and got all the great support that somebody in crisis may need in that moment, the first thing they asked for was a hug.
I know.
And,
I once witnessed a car accident going up north to a cottage, and I was alone on this back road, and there were 4 teenage boys who lost control of the car. The car flipped. It was amazing. The 2 of them in the front seat were hurt, not too badly, but hurt. There was one kid in the back seat who had a scrape on his thumb. The other kids I had to take care of medically, and he said to me 10 minutes into it, "Would you hug me?" Right? I said, "Yes, of course." That hug is very primal, right? That we need that, and so lots of hugs.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of hugging going on. The Genwell weekends, which are intended to rally us all around the simple idea of let's get connected and celebrate the value of human connection. We're going to make that first Genwell weekend the biggest human connection day that people have ever seen when we can make that happen. And whether that's across Canada or around the world, there's one big party and a big group hug coming, which I think everybody's going to look forward to being a part of. It may not open up as quickly as we all would like, and that it'll be our bubbles will continue to expand bit by bit. Right. But with each expansion of our bubble gives us an opportunity to hug a few more people. And I think that will make the world a happier and healthier place.
I do too.
So Mo, how can people get a hold of you if they're looking to find out more about the work you do as a couples therapist? Where should they go to find out more information?
So they could go to my my email address, which is maureen@maureenbrine.com, or my website, which is successfulrelationships.com. .ca, actually.
Wow, that sounds like a great URL to get, successfulrelationships.com. That's something I think a lot of people are looking for.
.ca, yeah.
.ca. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Mo, thank you again for your time. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. I know that people will watch pieces of this interview and that they will find some solutions and certainly help them build some resilience through these challenging times. So I thank you for sharing it, and thank you for making the time.
You're welcome, Pete, anytime.
All right, my friend. All the best.
Take good care.
Have yourself a beautiful day.
You too,
Ciao for
Pete.
now.